right, so this is gonna be our second retro series, a review, pay-per-view series. We're gonna be doing WrestleMania 2. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Frank. Let's get right into it.
All right, WrestleMania 2, which is like the forgotten WrestleMania
Sort of.
because it really wasn't that good. Spoiler alert, it really wasn't that good.
I
So
mean, yeah, I agree with you, especially this was in three venues.
yes,
This was at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Was it at the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago?
I think so.
I think at the time it was called, and then it was in Los Angeles for the third one.
In LA,
At the,
yeah.
I don't know if it was at the Forum or not, but like it mattered.
Yeah, that was that was the main event. Was LA. They got Hogan. They got Hogan.
They got Hogan,
Yeah.
yes. So, I mean, again, this was another star-studded celebrity venue. I mean, to say the least, you had Ray Charles, singing in the beginning of it at Madison Square Garden. You had Joan Rivers and Joe Frazier
Hmm.
in New York for that venue. You had Kathy Lee Crosby and Ernie Ladd in Chicago, and you had Tommy Lasorda, the ring announcer in the main event. You also had Ricky Schroeder, for anybody who doesn't know Silver Spoons back in the 80s.
That's right.
And I believe Alphonse Ribeiro was in that too from Fresh Prince. And then you had Elvira there. Okay.
Yeah.
And the one good thing about it, I mean, the combined attendance between the three was 40,085, which is pretty good for a venue back then. So I mean, there were a lot of good there was some good takeaways from this, and then some that wasn't.
Yeah. I mean,
One of the bad ones was the fact that if you were sitting at the Garden, you got four matches in front of you, and then you had to watch the rest
yeah.
on video. I mean, so I just maybe it was a good idea back then. I didn't like the three location. I don't know
Yeah,
about you.
the thing, it was just Vince thinking big. It was Vince trying. I didn't care for it either, but Vince was thinking like, oh, this would be incredible if we did three different venues. It's never been done. The technology wasn't really up to standard too, because if you ever watched the actual closed circuit edition of this, not the one that was edited for VHS Coliseum home video and stuff
Yeah,
like that, there's a lot of like blank staring into the camera because the sound is not coming through. There's a lot of miscues. I think this is the one where the closed circuit went down in Philadelphia or somewhere in Pennsylvania,
yeah, I heard about that.
and they had to refund the people. And then they gave it like on the local free network a few days later, or a week later. They actually
Yeah.
gave WrestleMania the only time they gave it like on free TV. They get in that so that was a little bit of
I mean,
a
if
mess.
you, I mean, to me, this one would go down as not so good up until we got WrestleMania 11, and we'll get into that later on. But I mean, let's just jump into the card
Yeah,
and give
let's
you
go.
guys the rundown of what happened. The opening matchup was now a fan favorite, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff against the Rock. Well, he wasn't the Rock Don
Yeah, he
Morocco, but
was
he was the Magnificent Morocco,
magnificent Morocco.
managed
Yeah.
by Mr. Fuji, who to me was one of those two guys right there could have definitely been champions too.
Oh
But for
yeah.
whatever reason, it passed them by. Morocco was a workhorse, former Intercontinental Champion. I mean, the guy, to me, his career, I think, peaked when he had the superstar Billy Graham in his corner.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that didn't last long later on in his career. But these two guys did put on a good match despite it ending in a draw.
Yeah.
So, I mean, otherwise, they put on a good opening match.
Yeah, I thought it was fun.
So that from there it followed the WWE Intercontinental Championship was the next match on the card. The champion, the Macho Man Randy Savage, against George the Animal Steel, who George the Animal Steel to me was better as a heel. I mean, forever during the late '70s, early '80s, this guy was the
Yeah.
heel of heels. And when they turned him fan favorite, I thought it was kind of a misdirection for him, but I guess his career was
It was.
coming down to the wire because he had wrestled for a long time leading up to this. So, I mean, I guess everybody's got to turn eventually to one thing or another. The match wasn't bad. I don't know what your opinion is of an IC title match.
It was okay. I mean, I didn't think it was
I mean,
anything
Randy
major.
Savage did come out victorious. Obviously, because to me, he was one of the hottest guys of
Hmm.
1986.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was on the rise.
Yeah, because if
You
anybody
know.
remembers, he did have a feud with Bruno Sammartino for the Intercontinental
That's right.
Championship.
That's right.
And which was a step down for Bruno. But again,
Yeah.
Bruno was a part-time wrestler at the time on his way out because he had wrestled for so many years. He was the inaugural WWE champion in 1963, held the title for
Mhm.
7 years. So, but to wrestle Randy Savage, obviously, those two guys put on a hell of a show especially at the Boston Garden, where they had one of their classic steel cage matches. But Randy Savage was a hot up and comer there, so obviously keeping the title on him made sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From there, we had a okay match in George Wells versus Jake the Snake Roberts, who at the time Jake Roberts was a heel when he first came in.
Right. Yeah.
He turned fan favorite later on when he feuded with Honky Tonk Man. Jake Roberts won this match. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one.
I don't really have any thoughts. It was what it was.
It's a match that, they were trying to push Wells to see what he can do against a newcomer in Jake Roberts. I think Roberts could have had a more stellar opponent, somebody else that could have challenged him a little bit more, because the match really wasn't that long.
No, it really wasn't.
But it benefited Jake Roberts, and he got his first WrestleMania victory. Yep. And the main event of the first venue of Madison Square Garden was the 10-round boxing match between Mr. T and Roddy Piper, in which Mr. T won when Piper decided to think it was a wrestling match.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a stinker. And it had been going on. That feud had been going on for so long, and to have a boxing match. Yeah, you know what I didn't mention in the previous review we did of WrestleMania, that Mr. T, he couldn't work. I mean, maybe it's not his fault or whatever, but he looked like he was gonna have a damn asthma attack after that match. I don't know if you remember when they cut the promo afterwards, and they were all being interviewed in the locker room, and Mr. T was like, he was out, dude. He was completely gassed. He blown up.
Yeah. Well, his issue was, and I think Hogan had come out with this too, that Hogan was trying to constantly ride him to do the training and to be successful at it. And to me, it just didn't look like he wanted to put the work in. Because he was active with the WWE for 2 years now, and for whatever reason, it just didn't look like he wanted to do the attempt to actually put the work in at the gym, or like the rest of these guys, for the endurance that it takes to get into the ring. And for whatever reason, that's why maybe this turned into a boxing match rather than a wrestling match. My personal opinion, I think Roddy Piper should have been in the main event in Los Angeles against Hulk Hogan, but we'll get to that main event in a minute. But for whatever reason, they put him at the low card main event in Madison Square Garden against Mr. T, which it may benefit Mr. T, but I don't think it benefits Roddy Piper.
No, not at all. I didn't care for it.
So from there, we go to Chicago, where the opening match is the WWE Women's Championship. It's the Fabulous Moolah once again reigning as champion, 2-time champion now, where she's challenged by Velvet McIntyre. The match was okay. There was some good points to it, but in the end, Moolah retained the title. And I think later on that year, she lost it or dropped it to somebody. So the next match on the card in Chicago was a flag match.
Okay.
Corporal Kirshner versus Nikolai Volkov. This match had its good points, and Corporal Kirshner did come out on the victory side. It was America versus Russia, and at the time
that was the hot thing. It was because it was during the Cold War.
Exactly, USSR. Yeah. So Corporal Kirshner was nothing big. I could have seen a guy like Sergeant Slaughter, who wrestled for them a few years prior, doing something like that, but obviously he wasn't in the WWE.
You know what happened with Slaughter, right? Why he got canned? It was over
the first time.
Well, yeah, he got canned a couple times. I know the thing with G.I. Joe.
The second time he had retired. After 91.
Right.
92 he pretty much retired.
But during that time and he was like second to Hogan, he was like the hottest babyface.
Yeah.
He was signing over the deal with G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe wanted to use him. Hasbro wanted to have him on the cartoon, and Vince didn't want him to do it. He didn't want him making money and signing out the character name and everything. He owned the character of Sergeant Slaughter. So he canned him, and he went and did G.I. Joe and made a ton of money.
Worked out for him. I'm shocked that Vince didn't want to do that, because the one thing that was kind of like his father, because if you remember when Hulk Hogan went to go do Rocky III, Vince Sr. at the time, who ran WWE, told him not to do it, and he actually fired Hulk Hogan.
That's right.
It wasn't a big attraction.
Right.
And then Vince McMahon Jr., when he bought it, brought him back, and actually he condoned, and he was proud of him for doing the movie. So it really is a shock that he didn't want Sergeant Slaughter or maybe because of the fact of the name. But I mean, WWE did not own the Sergeant Slaughter name.
No, he owned it
because he used it even when he was in AWA.
Yep.
So it's a little disconcerting to know that he didn't want him to do that, because he was always in favor of them doing anything Hollywood.
Yeah.
I mean, even to this day, I mean, they do WWE films. So yeah, that to me was mind-boggling. But Corporal Kirshner, he wasn't bad. It's just this promo. They didn't hype him up. He wasn't going to be more than a mid-carder. Not a guy that was going to get a title match. Mm-hmm. So for whatever reason, he gets the WrestleMania win against Nikolai Volkov, who was a top heel back then with Freddie Blassie. So I mean, that was fun. And then the next match we go to, and I actually like this one. This was the WWE and the NFL 20-man battle royal, in which we had NFL players and WWE superstars in the same ring. It was actually reffed by Ed Too Tall Jones. And I mean, this had the who's who of some of the WWE wrestlers, including NFL players, including Jimbo Covert, Bill Fralick, Russ Francis, Ernie Holmes, Harvey Martin, and Refrigerator Perry would be the biggest name.
And they were in Chicago.
In Chicago, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So he got the big pop when he came out.
Yeah,
especially when he went up against the next guy that was in there, Andre.
Yep.
Even Andre got up. Everybody stood up.
Mm-hmm.
But we know what happened. Then you had Andre the Giant and Ted Arcidi, who was a mid to low card guy. They were trying to push him, but there was nothing there.
Yeah, it just didn't.
Tony Atlas, one of the greats. Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, who were the Blue and Black Attack at that point. They had just arrived in WWE, but they were the Hart Foundation. You had the Killer Bees in there, Jumping Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair. Hillbilly Jim, Iron Sheik, Haku had just arrived, and he was the fan favorite at the time. Pedro Morales, former WWE and Intercontinental Champion. One of the all-time greats, Bruno Sammartino, was in that battle royal. Dan Spivey, and of course, Andre's nemesis, Big John Studd.
Yep.
And it actually came down. Oh yeah.
Whenever they
it actually came down to Andre and the Hearts.
Yeah.
As the final three, and I believe he eliminated them both together.
Yeah. Tossed them out.
So that was interesting, but of course, giving Andre the battle royal at the time where his supposed undefeated streak was going on, it made sense.
Yeah.
He was the hottest thing going. And then from there, we go to the main event of Chicago, the WWE Tag Team Championship, in which it was the dream team of Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake versus the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, in which the British Bulldogs won the tag team titles for the first time, which was a big thing for them.
Yeah, and this was in '86, and this is before, because later on that year, I think it was December, is when Dynamite Kid suffered that back injury, which basically ruined him for the rest of his career. So he was still at his peak during this match.
No, it wasn't that, because they actually wrestled up until '88 together.
No, but remember...
you mean the injury?
The injury.
Oh, the injury, yeah. Not the fatal one that ended his career.
No, but he had a really, really nasty... Remember, Davey Boy carried him to the ring, so they would drop the...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. That was right after they had lost the tag titles.
Yeah. So they were at their peak. They were tremendous together, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, they were, he wasn't out for too long, because then right after that, I mean, when we get into the next one, they were at the WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
I mean, he was still a tremendous athlete, and unfortunately, what happened to him, getting paralyzed and everything, what was a huge downfall for him. But yeah, they were the hottest tag team in 1986. Even into '87, they were still pretty popular, despite the Hart Foundation was the top team at the time. You had a thriving list of tag teams starting from '86
it was on fire
all the way to I would say 1992. Their tag team division was on fire, and they were one of the top teams that hung around for a couple of years.
Yeah, and this might be the best match on the card. I think it might be this match.
Yes, I would have to agree, because they put a tremendous match against Valentine and Beefcake, who were no slouches themselves. They were great as a team.
No, not at all.
So then we move out west, where they started in Los Angeles. The opening match for that one, and this wasn't too shady. This match was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Hercules.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention this. So the backstory of this was Bret Hart was supposed to face Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at WrestleMania 2. And for whatever reason, the office decided they weren't going to have Brett wrestle a singles match. I guess because he was still in the Hart Foundation, they were just kind of starting out. But they had done house shows, and I think there's a
oh yeah,
is the Boston Garden.
Yes,
Is the Boston Garden? They have that good match, so they had
yes.
already been practicing and they were ready for WrestleMania. They wanted to do it. Brett was excited, and then they ended up throwing him in the Battle Royal, and we got what we got.
Well, and also at the house shows, Jim the Anvil Neidhart and Bret Hart were doing a lot of singles matches, but they were only tagging on the pay-per-views,
right?
Until they finally just said, "Okay, we're going to have the Hart Foundation together." But
I would have loved to.
Ricky Steamboat. Oh yeah, I would have definitely.
I would love to have seen
match.
that. Yeah, what that could have been at WrestleMania, but.
Oh, definitely. Now your next match, I'm going to let you call this one. It was Uncle Elmer versus Adrien Adonis. Now, Adrien Adonis was managed by Jimmy Hart, who was being kind of pushed because he did feud with Hogan for a brief time for the title.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a guy that they actually got over, and I don't know if it was for the gimmick or whatever it was.
I mean, he was a master at getting heat. He always got heat.
He was good at it, but it just didn't click.
No.
And I mean, he lasted up until when we get into the WrestleMania 3. He lasted just till about then. But I mean, he never. He was a former tag team champion with I believe it was Dick Murdoch.
Yeah.
So at one time he did carry the tag team titles, but they never really did anything else with him. I mean, putting him with Jimmy Hart kind of helped, but I mean, he did get the victory here. But I mean, yeah, it wasn't nothing special.
No, that was kind of waste. That was kind of a throwaway.
Unfortunately, the next one, maybe not. It was Tito Santana and the Junkyard Dog against Terry Funk and Haas Funk. Now, Terry and Haas got the win. I mean, you remember back then they had all the Funks were there. Jimmy Jack, Haas, Terry. Terry was actually feuding with Hulk Hogan for a time for the title. Of course, again, it never happened. But Terry was a good worker in the ring. Always made you better than you were. Even for some time, I believe Dory Funk was also there with him. Teaming him against Santana and JYD, I would have rather seen an actual tag team in this match.
Would have made more sense.
Having Tito and JYD on singles, because that's what they would have done. I mean,
exactly.
Was a former tag team champion with Ivan Putski at one point. So he did, and obviously Strikeforce. So he was a tag team champion. So we know he's in the tag team division, but just JYD is not a tag team competitor.
No.
He's a singles wrestler. So I would have, even if you had these guys face him individually, JYD and Terry Funk, I think would have been a great match.
Yeah, it could have been.
The tag team match, it was what it was. Terry and Haas got the victory. So that was Tito's first WrestleMania loss, one of actually many, to be honest, because I think WrestleMania 1 was his only victory.
Yeah.
And then we go on to the main event in Los Angeles, where Tommy Lasorda was the ring announcer for this one. Robert Conrad was actually the special guest referee on the outside, because it was a steel cage match between Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy.
What can you say?
Didn't see it. I think the wrong guy was in the title match.
They had built up Bundy as the monster heel, and Hogan loved the monster heels. I think didn't he put him in an ambulance? Didn't King Kong Bundy put Hogan in an ambulance prior to that? He had the bandages, but see, prior to
this,
ribs or something.
Well, it was Big John Studd and King Kong Bundy that were tormenting Hogan, because at one point Orndorff was his tag team partner. Yeah. So I mean, you could have made a question that Big John Studd could have easily been in this match as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like I've said all along, it should have been maybe even Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
But I mean, for whatever reason, King Kong Bundy is Bobby Heenan's top guy.
Yeah.
They put him in the cage. They did a good job in the cage, and Hogan sold the sore ribs with the tape or whatever.
Yeah. It was.
And in the end, Hulk Hogan was victorious, climbing. I believe he climbed out of the cage.
Yeah, I don't know why he didn't just walk out of the cage, because this got whatever. But yeah, that was WrestleMania too.
I mean, they're not all luxurious. I mean, this one it had its moments, and they tried.
Yeah.
But to me, 1986 was just a year of why are they doing this gimmick? Like, it was just that type of roster, and it improved once they got to 1987.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely.
But just 86 to me was just a roster of I don't see a whole lot of main eventers on here.
Yeah,
And I
they had
mean,
no direction. I just think they really had no
not in
direction.
'86 they did. In
Um,
'85, yes, but
right,
'86
right, right.
no.
They kind of went off course, and then which they thank God it corrected itself. And
Yeah, when we get to the next episode, it
yeah,
really corrected itself.
yeah. So this is like the forgotten WrestleMania. For me personally, is the worst WrestleMania. I
Besides
recent
11.
well, I hadn't seen this one in years, and when I watched it recently, I remembered like, oh, now I know why I haven't watched this in years. Now I know this is not the WrestleMania that I watch repeatedly. So you guys let us know what you think. If you enjoyed it, let us know, man. Let us know why you enjoyed it. If you hated it,
Like I've said before, prove us wrong if you believe that this one was worth its weight.
yeah.
You know?
I mean, and
Please
if you
comment
hated,
on it if you disagree with us.
yeah, if you hated it, let us know too. So we'll be going through WrestleMania 3 next, and so like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.